On this episode of the Pontiac 326 build, we are going to continue off from the last episode. Be sure to click the link above to get yourself caught up if you have not already been caught up on the build for this motor, because we are literally continuing where we left off. I had done the plasti gauge and checked up on rod bearing clearance, and we are going to leave off right after that where we put the assembly lube on the mains and rod bearing, and then we assemble things and continue on from there. So be sure to check out the above one if you have not tuned in yet. Little pre-up on this here. This motor that is below me, you see this tool, this is a ridge reamer. This is the next motor build I'm doing on video for you guys, and it's a 301 Pontiac. So kind of funny, I get two very old Pontiacs. This one's from 77 though, so it's literally 11 years newer, and it'll be interesting for you guys. But be sure to tune in, subscribe, check it out. This video's coming soon. Alright, so when I do the rods, what I do is I push this piston down a little ways, and then I take and I apply a little bit of lubricant to the back of the surface of either the crank or the bearing surface of the rod, depending on what's easier to get at. In this case it was the crank. So then I bring this guy up, then I'll apply a little bit to the crank too, and as soon as I turn it, that stuff will just spread out. So I'm not too concerned about making sure I get full coverage around it. A lot of people will sit there and waste a ton of time trying to lubricate everything. They get it just all kinds of boogered up. That's unnecessary. This will actually ooze out. The little bit that I put on there is actually going to end up oozing out. That's because of how close the bearings actually are. There, you can see it. Just me doing that, and it's oozing out of the sides here. So it's got plenty of grease in there. I mean, doing that over, above, and beyond lubrication is totally unnecessary. Now, before I even tighten these down, I'm going to turn it a little bit. Squeeze it again, that way that lube spreads out. Now I will throw the nuts on here. Now normally I would not tighten these down yet, but I'm going to do it with you guys on camera because I want to show you the next step I'm going to take here. Oh, that's right, I didn't reset my torque wrench for the heavier torque. So let's do that. I'm going to set it at 43. It'll probably end up 43.5 to 44. 43.6, 43 on the nuts. Alright. Okay, so the next step I have to do is make sure that these nuts are not going to come off, and by doing this it's actually going to mark for me so that I know that I have already torqued these down. So I'm okay with doing this while you guys are on camera here, but normally I would wait till I have all of them just snugged up with the ratchet, and then I would torque them one at a time and go all the way to the end, and then run back and retorque them again just to make sure that I got them torqued. Or I would do this, mark them, go to the next one, torque it, mark it, so on and so forth. But either way, I want to make absolutely certain that I have torqued these enough. If they're a stretch bolt, you have to mark them somehow, some way, because you can't just go back and recheck them. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and try this here. And my goal here is to make sure that this nut is not going to come off. So what I'm going to do, I'm looking at this, and it's so far down that if I hit the top of this, I don't believe it's going to fatigue the metal enough to cause enough stress. So I'm actually going to go into the side here, and I'm going to go in the direction that's against the flat of the crank. That way I have a nice weight against it. There we go. I have one boogered thread at the end, and I have a boogered thread there. Now I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to try and hit it this way once and see what happens. No, I don't like what that did. I don't like that at all. Okay, so that doesn't work. Maybe I'll try it this way. There we go. That works a little bit. Going right in between, and it looks like it twists the castle nut. So now I know those things are locked. The concern is some of these threads have what looks like a little bit of overly worn threads, and we're not replacing these. So this is kind of a extra security measure to try and make sure these things don't come loose. Before you guys know it, I will have this thing all assembled, and next thing you know, it'll be like magic. It'll just be boom. So we have a engine with all the pistons, rods, the whole rotating assembly in here. Now we need to worry about the timing, so we got to get that set up. We also are going to show you something that you need to do. I mean, you kind of do it as you're going, but when you're installing these pistons, you're rotating the motor over to line up, in the right spot. Every one you install, the rings add enough resistance that you should feel a little more resistance in the motor. And at some point, you're not going to be able to turn this thing by hand. It gets pretty stiff. This one, it took until I had 6 of the pistons in before I couldn't turn it by hand. Now, after 4 of them, I was able to grab a hold of the counterweight, and then the crank and kind of do that number, just kind of reef it that way. And then on the 5th one, I couldn't really turn it very well anymore, and I just grabbed an extension. I used the counterweight holes here to, I don't have the mount tightened down. There we go. So I would just use the counterweight hole here and turn it that way, okay? That way I have a little leverage to pull on. And so, I'd go there, and then I'd go over to this one, and then I can just keep finding counterweight holes to go into and turn this motor over. Oop, that one's not deep enough. There we go. But you get the point. So that way I'm able to turn the motor. I mean, you could put a bolt on the end of the crank too. Either way works just fine. I'm going to go ahead and put the oil pump on here, and then we'll get to the timing components. First, I need to clean the oil pump, so I'm going to do that, I guess. Now, this oil pump has a pretty nasty little screen thing going on here, so I have all these bolts loose. I'm going to go ahead and take this cover off, clean out the pump, try and blow all this snot out of there, and then we'll go ahead and get this thing installed. Okay, you can see we have the timing set here. Now we're going with a double roller kit on this one. We're eliminating this crazy heavy goofy chain style. It's like a multi-link thing. I don't know if I have it. Maybe I'll show it to you later or something, but I have a puller on here, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull this gear off. It is more or less pressed on, so. Okay, so now I need to wipe this down because I don't know how much dirt is built up behind there. So this is a adjustable sprocket. We have a 0, an advance, a retard on here for keyways and the little marks on the gear, and we're going to be going with 0 on this one. It's amazing to me that that one came off so hard. I had to press it off so hard, yet this one almost slides right on. Slides right on so easy. I'm not even gonna. Yeah, look at that. I don't even have to get anything fancy. Well, that's convenient. That's nice and easy. I probably shouldn't have done that yet. Yeah, probably not. Because I see this has a keyway as well. It's not a bolt-on style, it's a keyway style. So I want to make sure. Well, there's a pin too. I don't have a pin though. I better look at that. Since that cam can go back towards the back of the motor, I bet you I can make this work. I still need to put the cam plate on here. I noticed I don't have any plate on here. I'm pretty sure there's a cam plate for this thing. So I gotta do that. But I'm thinking I can push this in to the motor to hook up my chain and then tweak and pull it out to get it so I don't have to press this or pull it back off again. Hopefully. So not only does this thing have a cam plate, but it also, I forgot about this, has this oblong thing for like driving a pump. So I gotta make sure I put that on too. So this thing actually has like a oil drain hole here, which is a little bit interesting to me. I don't recall ever seeing that, but here's the previous style of chain. So it's kind of a crazy heavy duty thing, but the double rollers are a much better chain. I don't know why. These things seem like they would last plenty long and be good chain, but okay, so I have the timing chain lined up here. There's a 0 here on the crank sprocket, and then there's a dot on the cam sprocket, and I just lined them up. This guy here is a little bit weird. So this fuel pump drive, you only got one spot that lines up with the keyway, and then the other, that big hole that's in it, it's like you have to try and center it on this washer. It's really bizarre. And then on top of that, this piece is really loose in there, and this is just like a slider, so whatever's pushing on here would allow it to roll with oil in it. I put some lube in there. So I'm going to go ahead and find the torque spec for this and torque this down, and then we will get the timing cover and some other components installed. Okay, so we're going to be putting the cylinder heads on here next. The one problem I have is, this surface area here. So I put this on off camera thinking I'm just going to get it on, get it out of the way. It's old school timing cover things. It's just bolting it up, Well, I ran across this. You can see where there's shiny spots and there's crummy looking spots. This has been corroded and very unevenly worn. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a file across the span of this to try and make it as even as possible. It's still going to be a little bit rough. I mean, it's a hand file. You can't really do real well with a hand file, but I'm going to do the best I can. I've already hit it a little bit, as you can see, but I'm going to show you the process I'm using to try and kind of sort of square this up and make it so it'll seal on the gasket better again, because the way it is now, it's going to have very uneven pressure and spots where the gasket is not going to seal very well and may start to leak later on. So let's go ahead, start hitting this with the file and show you what kind of process I'm using. So basically I'm taking this thing and I'm just kind of moving around from going like this to like this to like this. I'm just trying to find every possible avenue I can. I'll even go maybe across here like this real cautiously, trying to make sure it stays level. Kind of hit every corner I possibly can with the file as best as I can, which is difficult in some spots, like right here. I'm trying to span the side that I haven't been hitting. I just noticed I haven't been hitting it. But I'm basically just working it like this, and I'm trying to go until like this spot here has a shine to it, and then over here and over here there's a little bit of there's a gap right there that hasn't been touched yet that goes all the way across. That's no good. So I'm just going to go ahead, keep going here until I get it to have full contact of a shine spot all the way around. And like I said, again, it's crude, but one of the other things that you have to do, this is aluminum, so when you're doing this and you're going like this, that aluminum will gum up this file and make it cause huge scratches in here. So one of the things that I've been doing is I take it, I lift it off a little bit, and I just tap it against the base of this, and what that does is it knocks the aluminum off the file to keep it from building up, causing these little beads that will file these nasty spots into this. I just noticed something that is not good. There is a crack right here. So this stud, it was one of these studs just like this, but this was a stud that broke off, and I see a crack in the aluminum going down into the casting here. I'm going to take a look at that once. Yeah, it goes all the way back. That's going to leak. I guess we're going to go through and show you guys a way to fix that. I'm going to have to think about that, but I'm going to find a way to fix that without welding it. I could weld it, but that would be really, really tough on this old cast aluminum. It would probably spit and spatter. All I have is a TIG welder, and a wire feed would blast through here so fast. I don't know if that's a good idea either. So we're going to go ahead and do a little repair on this area. I'm going to give you guys a better shot here of what this crack is looking like after I clean it up a little bit. I'm going to hit it with a brush first. I'm actually going to try something quick. I have some muriatic acid here. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the end of this little stainless brush and then use the muriatic acid to try and clean that. Now this stuff is highly corrosive, so you got to be pretty careful with this muriatic crap. And it stinks to high hell if you don't have ventilation. I'm only using a little bit, so I'm not too concerned about it. But if I were to use a lot, this stuff is just nasty on your lungs. Now this is just water with a little bit of soap in it. I'm going to use that to neutralize all this acid that I just put on here. And normally I would not recommend shop air for an open motor like this, but I'm trying to get this cleaned up just a little bit here. Okay, so I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there is a crack definitely in that threaded area. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to also go down to here. There, you see that? Look at that huge crack going into that housing. So that would have been a leak this guy would not have had known about until it was too late in leaking. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and show you guys a way to fix this, and this would be a repair that's available to do in the vehicle, but I have to wait till I further assemble the motor because I don't want the motor at all open for what I'm about to do to fix this thing. So we'll wait till the motor is completed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of tape right over that so I don't forget that I have to repair that crack. Well, you can see the surface here is all nice and shiny, but it is not good enough. I'm going to put the cylinder head on, but my finger oil and the oil from assembling to slapping the pistons in here, etc., is still on the surface of this. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that off real quick, and then we will go ahead and get the head on. I'm going to make sure I go ahead and wipe the cylinder head down too before I put that on. Okay, I just looked over the gaskets. They look identical. Now, this is a unique engine in that, notice what these gaskets say on here. They say, apply copper coat sealant to the metal side only. So I am actually going to have to spray this gasket down with a copper gasket material, and I happen to have some here, so it's not a very big deal, but I just want to make sure I make note of that for you guys. And then, of course, they don't even say to remove this sticker, which I find kind of hilarious, because obviously you got to remove that sticker. I could totally see somebody who doesn't know what they're doing leaving that sticker on there and ending up with a problem. Oh, these have been in storage for far too long. This is going to be interesting. Yeah, that sticker is on there really bad. I'm going to have to use a razor blade and have some patience and get that out of there. Alright, so whoever the genius was over at that gasket manufacturing company, they need to find themselves a better way to do this. That was ridiculous. That was so hard to get off of there because I had to be so cautious not to scratch the surface. I still managed to leave a couple of scratches in the surface. The residue isn't so hard to get rid of because of a little chemical called acetone, which, by the way, I'm way too close to. Boy, does that stink. The acetone takes it off relatively good, so you can see the goo residue there. And with just a little acetone work, it's gone. But I do have some micro scratches here near the firing ring because of that frickin' process of trying to scrape that gasket off of there. That was extremely tough. God, I gotta get rid of that rag. Ooh, that was extremely tough. But I think I got it I got both gaskets cleaned up. It was not as easy as it should have been, obviously. And I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing on here. Huh. Well, I knew I had some, but by some, I thought I had, like a quarter of a can or half a can or something. There might be enough for one gasket on here. I better order some more. This is a copper spray gasket, high temp sealant. And you can see they got a picture of a head gasket on there. It says, improves heat transfer. Ooh. They're full of crap. It helps seal things. I don't know why they say that, but whatever. Improved sealing capability is more like it. So, I am going to start spraying this one. Now when you spray these gasket surfaces, what you want to do is make sure it's as even as possible, especially on a cylinder head gasket surface. Even though this is a really crude, I call them gooey gaskets. And the reason I call them gooey gaskets is there's like a graphite kind of material in here that will ooze and fill in any gaps and kind of seal everything. So these are kind of a crude gasket, but they work really well for sealing lower pressure cylinder type scenarios like an old school motor like this. So I'm going to go ahead and start spraying, and I'm going to try and make it as even as a coat as possible. So when you spray, so pretend my finger is on trigger, off trigger, right? So when you spray, you want to go start moving, hit the on, and then before you get when you get to the end, you hit off, then you start again. That way, no matter what, when you stop, say if you stop mid and turn around, you don't leave a big blob somewhere. It's kind of the basics of spraying paint. The same thing applies here. You want to get as even of a coat as possible. So spray a little bit first to make sure you get the material. Ooh, I might have to get a new can. This is not going to spray even. Try and find the hose. There we go. I think I found the hose spot here. There. Now I can get it even. Then so I went across this way, now I'm gonna go across this direction. You can see I have the drill bits in these holes here. That is for fear of this gasket moving. So I have that gasket sealer on there. It's a little bit wet yet. I want it tacky when I do it. And the last thing I need though is for me to put the head in place and then it slides. You know what I mean? So I put these in here since it doesn't have any kind of dowels. I figured this will be a way to keep the head from moving around, and I'll just put the other head bolts in, get them started before I find a sweet spot and settle this thing into place. Whew. That's amazing how heavy these heads are. The two heads easily outweigh the block on this thing. It's just crazy. You notice I put the lifters in. Some heads on the newer motors, especially like an LS-based motor, they require the lifters to be put in before the head. So I've gotten into a habit of that, and I found that to be a benefit. Like on a small block Chevy, if you're doing a performance build, they have those crossbars. It's a lot easier to put the lifters in when they have those crossbars if you're doing like a full roller cam. If you put those lifters in before the head, it makes it a lot easier. So it's just kind of a habit I've gotten into. It's a good habit to get into. Well, that sums up this video before it gets too long, and that's the end of this little 326 ordeal. For now, we will have another episode for sure, maybe two, but I'm hoping to leave it down to one more episode and it should be done. Now, I won't be able to have this vehicle running, but I will at least have the job completed and have given you some helpful tips in building an engine. Perhaps I will get a future video of the car running in a later episode. Thanks for joining me, and be sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I hope to see you on the next video.